Good evening. You are watching Asia Prime on Metro Globe Network. I'm Sarah Wayne.
And I'm Ralph Tapobolon, coming to you live from Jakarta, Indonesia. And over the next 60 minutes, we have top stories from all over the world. Malaysia hit by COVID cases boom. New COVID-19 cases climbed to nearly 8,000 on Thursday. Next Monday, Malaysia will open the nation's first mega vaccination center.
Indonesia released the 5G network. This high-speed data traffic is part of the Indonesian massive digital infrastructure development.
And the Indonesian People's Consultative Assembly MPR leaders visit Russia to seek further cooperation possibilities, including on vaccine. The Russian coronavirus vaccine Sputnik V is known for its high effectiveness in preventing symptomatic illness.
Syrian President Bashar Assad was re-elected in a landslide, ushering in a fourth 7-year term in the war-torn country following an election described as illegitimate and a sham by the West and his opposition.
Assad's win was not in doubt in an election where officials say 18 million were eligible to vote. But in the country ravaged by the 10-year-old conflict, areas controlled by rebels or Kurdish-led troops did not hold the vote. At least 8 million, mostly displaced, live in those areas in northwest and northeast Syria. Over 5 million refugees, mostly living in neighboring countries, have largely refrained from casting their ballots.
Syria's parliament speaker Hamoud Sabag announced the final results from Wednesday's vote. He said Assad garnered 95.1% of the votes. He was facing symbolic competition from two candidates, a foreign minister and a former opposition figure. Assad's victory comes as the country is still devastated by the conflict.
Hundreds of Palestinians lined up in Gaza City Thursday to receive aid donated by Egypt to the war-battered Gaza Strip.
Residents of Gaza.
Well, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken visited Egypt and Jordan on Wednesday to shore up the Gaza ceasefire between Israel and Hamas.
Antony Blinken's first trip to the Middle East as Secretary of State came just days after a fragile ceasefire in Gaza, where an Israeli offensive in response to deadly Hamas rocket attacks left scores dead and buildings in rubble. The focus of Blinken's talks this week with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas, how the US can shore up the Egypt-brokered ceasefire and help rebuild Gaza.
We know that to prevent a return to violence, we have to use the space created to address a larger set of underlying issues and challenges. And that begins with tackling the grave humanitarian situation in Gaza and starting to rebuild.
The US commitment to rehabilitate Gaza raises the question of how to get aid into civilians without it going to Hamas, the US-designated terror group that controls the Palestinian territory.
We'll work with our partners closely with all to ensure that Hamas does not benefit from the reconstruction assistance.
US officials suggest involving the United Nations and the Palestinian Authority to circumvent Hamas. Some Israeli observers are sceptical. Pincus says that before the latest hostilities, Qatar was sending $30 million a month in cash into Gaza via an Israeli border crossing. Israeli defense officials are calling for that to end. During his trip, Blinken said he would request $75 million from Congress for economic assistance to the Palestinian people. The Palestinian Authority greeted this pledge as a welcome start at rebuilding relations. These reached a historic low under the Trump administration, which moved the US Embassy in Israel to Jerusalem and cut funding to UN agencies supporting Palestinians. On the Israeli side, the latest hostilities in Gaza are prompting a reassessment of Israel's policy towards Hamas. As the US tries to reset relations with the Palestinian leadership, Secretary Blinken continues his efforts to turn a shaky Gaza ceasefire into a more stable truce. Iris Makler for VOA News, Jerusalem.
Moving on to Hong Kong, media tycoon Jimmy Lai faces sentencing on Thursday over his participation in Hong Kong's pro-democracy protests in 2019.
Lai, who founded the Apple Daily newspaper, faced 3 charges over his involvement in the demonstrations. Thursday's sentencing was in relation to his alleged role in an unauthorized assembly in October 2019. It came as Hong Kong's legislature passed a bill amending electoral laws that drastically reduces public's ability to vote and increases the number of pro-Beijing lawmakers making decisions for the city.
The protests in 2019 were driven by anger over a now withdrawn extradition bill that would have allowed people in Hong Kong to be extradited to mainland China for trial. A new national security law imposed by China is now widely seen as aimed at tightening control over Hong Kong. Meanwhile, a wildfire has destroyed several homes and forced evacuations in the small central Arizona mining community of Baghdad.
Arizona forestry officials say the fire is fueled by dry grass and brush. ABC 15 reports the helicopter crew counted at least 15 homes that were on fire or heavily damaged. The Baghdad Fire Department said the entire town was evacuated. Italian police arrested 22 people Wednesday who they believe were part of criminal groups that specialized in breaking into cash machines with an excavator.
A police statement accused the 3 criminal groups of carrying out the heist, which involved using stolen excavators to remove the machines before they were loaded onto stolen trucks and driven away. Detectives first investigated the string of robberies when a bank in Marsala on the island of Sicily had its cash machine stolen on July 2019.
Police officers believe the 3 criminal groups were responsible for 5 robberies between July 2019 and February 2020. The suspects have been charged with criminal conspiracy, aggravated theft, and other theft offenses.
Stay with us on Asia Prime. We'll be right back after the break with more news and information.